Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Business Bites. My name is Henry. I'm here from the Kent and Vics Chamber of Commerce. Welcome. I hope you're all, like I said earlier, gearing up for Christmas now. Surely you can't have too many days left. I've got today and tomorrow, so I can't wait for a nice long break. I'm delighted to be joined by Marcus Haycock today, who is going to be delivering this session on how you can improve your conversations in the space of an hour. Marcus and I have been discussing. He's planned about 45 minutes or so of presenting, and then there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to all get involved and join in a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions throughout, please just note these down in the chat on the right hand side. You'll get that off the bottom. And for those of you that have joined perhaps off of like an iPhone or anything like that, if you haven't renamed yourself already, just so we know who you are for attendance, please do so. Other than that, that's everything from me. I'm now going to pass you over to Marcus. Marcus, over to
Thanks, Henry. Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day to come and join me today. Just to let you know, I want this to be an interactive session. Please use the chat facility. There'll be a few interactive exercises for us to do various things, which will reiterate a certain point. And today, I want to introduce you to Insights Discovery, which is a tool and a company which has been specializing in communication preferences for over 30 years now. I want to make something really clear. This is just really a top line introduction. And as you can see with this metaphor here, what I'm going to give you is some sort of baseline observations and techniques to maybe walk away with and experiment with. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. So you can get really good at this when you have more information and you start practicing this on a day-to-day basis. But I'm confident you'll get one or two real insights which you can use and will help you with your communication with other people. So we're going to begin our self-awareness journey today. Please feel free to use the chat as I said, and we'll move on. So yeah, I also work in partnership with an organisation called LMI. LMI focus on leadership development, and we generally believe that if people develop leadership skills before they get into positions of, say, influence, such as team coordinators and managers, the business has a continual pipeline of really great people to be able to be nurtured when they do go into leadership. And if we categorize leadership into four key areas, personal productivity, optimizing time management is absolutely key. Personal leadership, how you lead yourself, is also critical before leading others. When people think about leadership, you usually think about team leadership. And then ultimately, if you are leading the organization, you want to be able to create really strong engagement with everybody, which means creating the culture, the purpose, so everybody gets galvanized and aligned in one direction. And we've been doing this for over 60 years and we've trained 2 million people. But today, what we're really looking at is vision and communication, which is that one core aspect of motivational leadership. So that's just really to put it in context. So today is all about connections. So for a minute, I want everybody to think about it could be people in your personal life, it could be people in your business or in your team. Who do you want to connect more with? So to make this really relevant, reflect and think, okay, maybe I've got a particular challenge with a certain person. We don't always see eye to eye. How could I make a better connection with that person? And think about that as we go through this session today. So I've been doing Discovery Insights now for quite some time, and the whole focus of this is to raise, first of all, everybody's self-awareness. I work in large companies, I also work in small companies, and these pictures here just demonstrate some of the things we do from a team perspective. These are great all-day events where people learn a lot more about themselves, but more importantly, they learn a lot more about others. So you can focus on insights to improve your individual communication effectiveness, team effectiveness, the culture of your organization, how to develop leaders, but ultimately, from a business perspective, how do we improve business performance? And what you see in these photos here are people with their own profiles and they get to share these profiles with one another and understand each other's preferences. Such a fun event. In fact, I've been involved in business and learning and development for over 35 years, and these events are perhaps some of the most intriguing and fun events you can ever do in any business. And there's lots of success case studies around that. Just before we get into this, very, very interesting. I attended a skills summit in East Sussex about 2 months ago. And what they were doing there is they were looking at the skills needed in the next 10 or 15 years, given the fact that everybody is talking about AI now. We know that some people are a little bit worried about this because they think AI is taking people's jobs away from them. But what was really interesting, considering all these people are at the forefront of skills development, they appreciate that AI is coming to help us, but your edge is really about being more human. And what was interesting from 200 professionals in the room was they said the number one skill which will equip employees to excel in their role in the future is all about communication skills development, which I thought was quite interesting. So it's not about being super technical in the future, it's being more human, connecting with people and having that infrastructure to be able to do that. So, very simple metaphor here is technical skills are no longer the differentiator they once were, but human connection is. And it's a bit like, if you're a communicator and you're running a business, you're a team leader, if your communication skills aren't optimum, it's a bit like having people in an orchestra and not really connecting with that conductor. So, interesting for us to reflect on right now is the fact that 95% of people probably on this call think they are truly self-aware, but we know from the research, because of different communication preferences, only 10 to 15% of people are truly self-aware. So there's a huge gap here. And this was also documented by this organizational psychologist called Tasha Eurich. And if anybody's interested in reading about this, she wrote a seminal bestseller book called Insight, The Power of Self-Awareness in a Self-Deluded World. And I really recommend that if you want to improve your communication skills. So what we try and do really at LMI, but also with Insights as well, is you often get this in businesses and in teams. It's almost expected. So what we have is me, you, a difference in communication preference, and usually, sometimes, potentially friction. And we have two ways and two paths to go down. The first path is the less desirable path, which is once we get that friction, we potentially get misunderstanding. That can lead to mistrust, followed by maybe personal rejection and then conflict. So we want to try and avoid that at all costs. A better way really is to take time out to really understand that person and their communication preference. When we do that, we develop trust, we develop acceptance, and that leads to us communicating and connecting with people in the right way. So that's the much preferred path. And this is where insights, raising your self-awareness, being able to decode others and adapt is the way forward. And that's what Insights is all about. So we know the kind of challenges we've got in the workplace with increasing legislation, that there's more and more formal grievances which are coming up in the UK right now. In fact, this survey by ACAS, and this is 2021, it's probably gone up since then, said for most employers they're spending 951 in management time per case, with an estimated 374,000 formal grievances each year. Now, these are serious cases where things have escalated beyond control. Think of all these mini scenarios where people are not getting on quite so well, but it doesn't result in a formal grievance, but there is a communication breakdown and silo working. So it is very problematic in companies right now, but it doesn't have to be this way. So first interactive exercise here. And please don't overthink this, and I'm going to come back to Henry for some comments. But when someone speaks to you at work, what do you value most in a person's communication style? If everybody could just put one word, no more than one word, in the chat, what would it be? And then, Henry, can you just read out a few of the things which are coming in?
Absolutely. Angela said positivity, you've got clarity, confidence. What else have we got? Keep them coming. Some people have been putting, instead of words, they've been putting the actual letters against it. So Jennifer's put C, for example, Karen's put B. Quite a few have put knowledge, eye contact, authenticity. There we go. There's just to name quite a few.
So,
Positivity again.
so brilliant. Thank you for doing that. I think the point we're trying to get across there is, would it be fair to say from what you can see, Henry, that there's quite a range of
Yeah,
different
there's a mix, a big mix.
a big mix, and therefore we have to appreciate people's differences and how they want to communicate and how they want to be expected to communicate. And we've done a very simple experiment there just to show you that people want different things when they communicate with each other. And our job really is to decide how they how they prefer to be communicated and also for us to adapt to a certain extent. So, a simple analogy here is communication fails when leaders think they're building that connection, but they aren't checking on the alignment. And we've seen things that are on a massive scale in industry where, we've even had events like this in real life. But in simple terms, in real teams, if you have people in management positions and they've never really been trained on leadership, this can cause a problem. And we do know that 82% of managers across the UK are what we call accidental leaders. They've never had structured training. And it is an art form and it can be learnt. And this can cause a few of the problems we've got with communication. So an interesting one, and my mother, bless her soul, has passed on. So I hope she doesn't think ill of me when she's looking down on me when I say this. But I remember as that little boy when I was 3 years old, and I perhaps had a tantrum and I didn't get my way, she used to say, Marcus, talk to people how you would like to be spoken to, which seemed at the time kind of nice advice because my mother was very respectful and caring. But the contrarian view today, which is perhaps a better view, is a skilled connector and communicator. It's really best if you approach people and team members and customers in a manner that suits their preferences. So you're able to spot how they communicate, you flex your style and make that connection. Now, can you imagine if everybody in your business or in your team took the same approach? There'd be less judgment, more curiosity, more connection, more innovation and creativity. So that's the view of making the workplace better in terms of communicating with one another. Another simple exercise here, I suspect quite a few people might have seen this before, but again, it illustrates the viewpoint that we perceive the world through our own eyes, which can be unique to us. So I'm going to show you this image here, and in the chat, can you tell me what you see in this image? So again, Henry, I'm going to need your expertise on this, but what do you see in that image?
I've got lady, an elegant lady, lady. I was going to say I don't want to sway people's opinions, but I can see a younger lady. But we can see a back of a woman's head, an old lady and a beautiful lady. Yeah, most people are saying lady. Lady with head dressing.
Yeah. So did somebody say old lady?
Yes, we have one person who said old lady.
Okay. Does anybody else see the old lady as well? Okay. So if I was to say to everybody that depending on your perception and your perspective, there's actually two images there. People might find this fascinating, but there's an old lady there and there's also a younger lady. So when people describe elegance, they may be seeing the leather boa, kind of the boa in the hair, somebody with their hair tied back, looking away, looking elegant with a beautiful long neck. But there's also another lady in the picture who looks uh, slightly frazzled, older, maybe bending down, sad, probably 80 years plus. Probably not everybody sees that, but it is there. So it's a good metaphor for how we perceive the world and real events. Hopefully, I'm going to make this a little bit easier now. So if I show you this, can everybody see two images now? If you see two images now, can you just say yes in the chat?
A lot of people saying yes.
Whereas maybe before they couldn't see that.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying yes.
So where I'm going with all this, everybody, is it's important that, we people do perceive the world differently to others, and they make value judgments and possibly judgments on that. When I've done these workshops in the past, some people have described the older lady and they've used terms like, oh, she's a witch, So we've just shown an image, but because she's got that crooked nose, it was interesting to say that they'd made a value judgment about what they saw in the picture. And this is sometimes how human nature works. We can get judgmental because it depends on what's happened in our childhood, in our previous business experience. It can be previous condition, but we are all different and we do perceive the world in different ways. Now I'm going to introduce you to the exciting bit, which is in the Insights colour model. And again, this is a very simplistic talk today, condensing so much, but most of you have probably heard of Jung, the psychologist who wrote a book called Typologies in 1923. And what he observed really was that when he started looking at behavior, he saw patterns in the way certain human beings reacted and communicated. Insights came along in the early 90s and used various isometric sort of testing, communication preferences, and they came up with this four colour model. And this is something you can observe and use after this workshop today. And he describes, the Insights describes these four quadrants, where we're able to look at the preferences, the dominant preferences of each individuals and see what they lead with. There is a big caveat here. The big caveat is that it's really important never ever to pigeonhole people. So people are a combination of four colours. The danger is a little bit of information can lead to poor decisions. And it's not to say that if your dominant energy is red, you are all red all the time. You're not. You're a mixture. But certain clues in how you communicate will lead us to understanding people a little bit more. So fiery red, we've got fiery red, sunshine yellow, earth green, and cool blue. For you to get a bit more self-awareness today in terms of what your color preference is, what I want you to do now is to look at all these words, and you'll need a pen and a pad, and I want you to choose 10 words, and I want you to write those 10 words which you feel are most applicable to you. We can reflect for a minute, but if you can write them down, just pull out 10 words on that list there. That's the first part of the exercise. And then, Henry, if you can give a thumbs up in chat when you've done that, then we know I can reveal the next slide, which is probably going to be the most interesting slide for self-knowledge. What do you reckon, Henry? We seen any thumbs up yet?
I've done mine, but I'm waiting for a few others to put their thumbs up first. We haven't got any yet, so just put a thumbs up or just a message in the chat once you've got it. There we go. First one's in.
Brilliant. Yeah.
A couple more still to do it. There we go. Another thumbs up's coming up across the screen, and another. There we go. We'll give it maybe 20 more seconds just to pick your last ones.
Yeah.
There we go. They're all coming in now. I don't know if you can see it. They're all coming up on my screen.
Brilliant. Okay.
There
Well,
we go.
thank you, everybody. You're going to be thinking, right, well, what are we going to do now? So the next slide will reveal all. The next part of this two-part exercise now is to look at what you've selected there, and you'll see four colors there, red, green, blue, and yellow. What you need to do is to add up all the colors and match the color number to each word, and then put them in order. So, for example, if on this call today you've got five words and they're all yellow, you would lead with a yellow preference. So yeah, add up all the different colors you've got and then stack them accordingly. And if you can put in the chat the color which is the one which shows up the most, your highest number of colors attributed to each of the words. And I'll just wait until you're able to do that in the chat, and then all will be revealed on your preferences. Maybe I can use you as a guinea pig, Henry, and you can tell me what your primary color is, yeah?
My primary color was blue, but it was quite closely followed by red.
Okay,
So three
right.
reds, two yellow,
Okay.
one green.
So you're blue red, yeah.
Yeah, blue then red.
In fact, that's
Other
quite
people just
useful
coming
as
in.
well to know what your second color is, but we'll go for the first one in the chat, but also
Quite a few,
reference your second one. Pardon?
quite a few yellows, one green.
Yeah,
No one's joining me on blue. Another couple greens. Quite a few green. A lot of green.
yeah.
There we go. Lara's on my team. Another blue. Yeah, a bit of a mixture, but primarily we've got greens, yellows. No reds yet,
No,
interestingly.
no reds. Okay, yeah.
Probably the most common one I would say is yellow and green, and then it's blue, I would say.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for doing that. What does that now mean? Well, let's dive in and just remember this is not the full profile. This is just giving us a clue. The only way we can see how your unique communication preference works is to have a full profile. But this gives us clues, and that's essentially what we need today. So have a look at this. So people who, for instance, are driven with a strong yellow preference, you probably will identify this. People would describe you, and I'm going to say this, on a good day. So when you're in your element, you're not stressed, you're in the zone. People will describe you as sociable, dynamic, enthusiastic, and persuasive. Right? I reckon that's completely right, would you say? For all those people leading with yellow. For people leading with green, they would describe you as caring, encouraging, sharing, patient, and relaxed. For you, Henry, you're somebody who values preciseness. You're questioning and curious. You can be a little bit cautious because you want to get things completely right. And maybe a little bit more formal to begin with in tone. Would you say that's kind of true?
It's about right, to be fair.
If we did have anybody on the call who is primarily driven with red, strong sense of purpose, strong will, determining, competitive, can be described as demanding as well. There's nothing wrong with any of this. So we don't label anybody. Everybody, when we look at insights, is perfect the way they are. This is what makes the fabric of society so interesting and why we can achieve what we can in really good dynamic groups. The challenge comes is when we're put under pressure, and this goes for everybody, when we're stressed, look how this flips. So this is more the kind of more negative associations with these colors. So we probably all come across people with strong red energy and not self-aware, and to other people, they're perhaps coming across as overbearing, intolerant, maybe coming across as aggressive or controlling. The opposite type for somebody leading with red is green. So this is something to be aware of when people leading with red and people leading with green both have bad days. There can be quite a lot of friction there because people leading with red may describe people leading with green as being bland, stubborn, reliant on old methods. People leading with yellow, communicating with people leading with blue on bad days. People leading with blue might describe them as excitable, flamboyant, hasty, not thinking things through, overexcitable. But people who are yellow, looking at people who are having a really bad day and they're blue, they might think, well, they're very cold, reserved, suspicious about a lot of things, and really indecisive, and can't really make a fast decision. So we know that's not typical of everybody at all. That can be a perception of what people see and describe people, particularly on those days where things are not going to plan and we're stressed. So what we need to do, the first thing is we've got to know what our own preferences are. We've got to understand that, and we've got to be more mindful of what happens to us in stressful events, so we can also be adapt to that. So is that kind of making sense? Thanks. So another interesting exercise, I think it's worth doing, and again, Henry, if you want to look at that, I'm going to shift that so I can see it. When I'm under pressure, I tend to let's see what people put in the chat. Don't put any words in there where you feel uncomfortable, but don't overthink it either. If you're under pressure, what do you tend to do? Just one word. And then we'll just have a range of different words read out if you feel comfortable with that.
We have reflect, procrastinate, stress. So I was a bit quiet. That's what I was going to say. Overreact, talk fast, stress, freeze, snappy. That's a good one. Stutter more, breathe, impatient, procrastinate again. Withdraw. That's an interesting one. Quiet as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that. I know that's quite a bold move to share stuff. We all react to stress in different ways. But if you were to categorize those, knowing a little bit more about the color preferences, we can almost see now what color preference people would be in. So for somebody who says, oh, I get impatient, that could be related to somebody driving a little bit with red energy. For somebody who says, yeah, I tend to withdraw, that could be somebody who, is leading with quite a lot of green energy. So there are clues about how people react and what their preference is. So if you are responsible for leading teams or connected with a lot of people in a team, if you're aware of how people react under stress and you can spot them, you don't always have to react to them. So that can be quite useful. So I'm going to give you a quick snapshot here. I mean, if people want to take a copy of this can be highly useful. A slide. So when we look at people, let's say you're a person who is led by a lot of blue energy, and you come across a colleague who's obviously very extrovert, very expressive. When you want to communicate with them, they're motivated really primarily by excitement. They have an optimistic nature and they want to be communicated in a way which stimulates their excitement. So they wouldn't be very good at listening to a talk full of stats at a kind of very monotone pace. Maybe none of us would, but particularly people leading with yellow. Because it's all about being in the moment, being motivated, getting excitement, getting an energy, and feeling really connected to people. That's where they get their energy from. Equally, when we have colleagues who have a strong green preference, we need to make sure that we make space for that personal connection. People who have strong green energy are brilliant at looking at the team members and making sure that they feel connected. They're great empaths and they just want to support people. So if you're in a team where they deprioritize that, that can be a real challenge for people with a strong green energy because they want to feel connection. They want to feel like they're looking out for people. They don't like conflict. And that really stimulates them when everybody feels connected, part of that general bigger purpose within the team. People who've got a strong red energy, we didn't see many of those in the chat, but these are people who are really driven by results. They don't like small talk very much. They're always on the go, and they like information packaged up in a concise manner, which focuses on output. They're less bothered about the detail. They can be quite trusting as long as you deliver a good result for them. But as we know, they can be quite impatient under pressure. And if they're not self-aware, the challenge could be is that they may be perceived as being a little bit overbearing. People who have a lot of blue energy are really motivated by correctness, by having the right data to make logical and reflective decisions. They really like detail and they adopt an evidence-based approach. You might find quite a lot of people in the scientific community who lead with this. They like research. It's about correctness and it's about making the right decision based on logic. None of these profiles are any better than the other. It just means that people have got a different preference to be communicated with. What I've also said as well, which I keep reiterating, is that every one of us has each one of those colours and we can dial them up and we can dial them down. So if you're naturally led by yellow, it doesn't mean you can't access your blue energy. It just means that if you're not really making too much of an effort and you're on autopilot, this area is where you're going to be focused on most of all. But we all have the ability to flex our colours. And that's a very empowering message. It's just all about self-awareness and decoding with others as well. So if we put this in terms of strategies improving your connection with other team members, you've now identified, and you've probably seen the clues in your place. I can think of somebody who's got a really strong blue energy, and I've got a meeting with them. It's important not to go to that meeting completely unprepared. So be prepared and do not be flippant on important issues as well, because that really makes a difference. Then you might have somebody who's driven by a lot of fiery energy. What you have to do there is just to make sure that you're direct to the point, you don't hesitate or waffle, and you cleanly communicate with them. People who are focused on earth green, it's really important that we don't feel like we're pushing people to make decisions. We need to be patient and supportive and really include them in that decision making. And also people who are really strongly led with yellow energy, it's important that we don't tie them down with routine, but we maintain that friendly and sociable first impressions with them and really keep that energy levels up. So that's a nice little blueprint for when you're connecting with people, and you're very welcome to take a screenshot if that helps you. So why communication preferences matter at work? Well, like I've said before, every team has a mix of different communication energies. We know that no one person can be perfect. It's impossible. We have different preferences, we have different skill sets. But when you have a diversified team with lots of different color energies, different experience, different skill sets, potentially you can have a team which could be perfect. What we try and do is when we raise awareness, we can reduce friction. But without awareness, friction and misunderstanding can occur. And the worst case scenario means, we want to avoid this at all costs. It can result in grievances, often linked into lack of self-awareness. So what we say with Insights for everybody who is in an employee, and certainly everybody in a leadership position, you should start with strong self-awareness. A great opportunity to consider is to have an insights discovery personal profile carried out within your business and within your team. I had mine done in 2011, and I found that it's been a self-development tool for life. I can always reference it, and it can be as short or as long as you need. So it's particularly useful, for managing teams. As a manager of a business consulting team, I make sure that every single one of my business consultants completed one of these. And as a manager, I almost became telepathic in my ability to understand people because I looked at their profile, I looked at their energy preference, and I could adapt my style, which would suit them from a connection and a trust point of view. Absolutely invaluable. It also gave me an opportunity to look at my team as a whole and look at where the preferences are. And then if I was expanding my team, also to figure out, do we have any skill gaps or communication preferences which are missing? So these are incredible tools. And the idea here with this is we're not trying to change your personality at all because it's perfect the way it is. What we are trying to do is just raise self-awareness, not just about individuals, but amongst teams and business cultures as well. So, as I said, it's comprehensive, it's detailed. You've got a tool for life here. So, how can you spot whether insights would be of benefit to you within your company? Well, there will be blind spots, particularly for yourself and in teams. And if you see any of these, it could be a starter just to have a curious conversation. So if you're seeing that in your company, there are unclear asks and expectations given to you by managers, maybe within the team there's an over-reliance on one particular style. Maybe there's a situation where feedback's being given in maybe a clumsy way, which doesn't always inspire or empower. You're attending meetings where you think, they're just not really productive. Why did I attend that? You may find other people, perhaps a little bit of friction, they're misreading the cues of other people. It doesn't have to be that. And maybe there's a whole shift which needs to happen, which is a shift from judgment about surface level communication preferences for people to one of curiosity. I wonder why they communicated like that. What would be behind their profile? So these are a few of the kind of insights you may find that there is opportunities to investigate this a little bit more. So what I've seen throughout my career, and I've been an insights practitioner since 2016, there is a methodology to really, really increase performance within a business. It starts with self-awareness for everybody, understanding others, and then adapting. When you do that, you deliver an increased connection with them, which leads to better trust, higher performance, lower staff turnover, and probably a reduction in stress as well, because you haven't got that friction which you used to have. And that all leads to better performance. So there is a distinct scientific methodology to this. And you have a business ripple effect. When you start taking a better connection with people, as we know, this is going to be the future, which is the standout for companies. Empathy sometimes has been described as a soft skill. We talk about soft skills. They're not soft skills. They are really smart business skills. So I do think they need to be reframed in a certain way. If you think about why Discovery Insights is so popular, across the world since the 90s, over 10 million people have had their profiles done. You'll see some big company names like the NHS, Indeed, McCain, Specsavers. They all use this in their organisations as a simple methodology to get employees to understand one another and customers that much better. So when you get really good at this, you do get a big improvement in that connection and an increase in business performance as well. So creating that culture, just very simply, if we look at the employee, it's developing the self-awareness, the communication skills, and that adaptability and collaboration. For the manager, it means you can be a better leader, you can create more impact, you can reduce that conflict down, and you can build stronger, cohesive teams performing well. And for the whole business, you have one unified framework which enables you to connect a lot more, which can lead to higher retention. And also from a customer experience point of view, if you're in a customer setting where you service a lot of customers face to face, you can enhance your customer experience, which creates loyalty and referral. Um, so I just wanted to end this call now with a bit of a chat, a bit of feedback from everybody, open the floor. Um, but I thought I'd pose a few questions here so people can use the chat facility for this. But let's open the debate up. So, what's the one insight from today that, if you applied it, would most improve how you would communicate? Does anybody want to share that in the chat or come off microphone and talk?
Yeah, feel free to unmute and ask away if you did have a point on that one or an answer to that question. If not, we do have a quick question that came up throughout in the session. I don't know whether it'd be easier to answer that first, Marcus.
Yeah, sure. Whatever's beneficial for everybody.
Perfect. Angela, you had a question. I don't know whether you wanted to unmute and ask. There we go. Yeah, perfect.
Hi. So I always find that I think that your communication approach varies depending on who you're talking to and the topic that you are discussing. So if you're training a new starter or you're talking to a new starter within your team, you'd offer them more support, more encouragement section. But if you were telling, if you were giving directive to an existing team that you knew what they were doing, you'd be more in the red section where you'd be just expecting them to understand your needs and you have confidence in them and their ability to do that. So I think my approach depends very much on who I'm talking to and when.
Yeah, Angela, I think you're right. So I think what you're describing is some people would use that situational model, the situation
Yeah.
of leadership, which is perfectly correct. And that is very much focused on skill. This is an extra layer in terms of maybe the personality preference and the emotions. So you could have somebody, for instance, who's very, very skilled, but is led with a lot of green energy. And then you could have a new starter who's very red as well. So it's just packaging up your messages and your communication preferences in how you communicate that as well. So it's an extra layer to consider, if that makes
Thank you.
sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. That was a great question, that was. So thank you for bringing that one up. Any other questions as well?
Perfect. We did actually have a response from Amanda Wilson, to the first question that was posed. I don't know if you wanted to unmute and make your point, Amanda.
Yeah, it was only that I think the most useful thing is to remember when people respond, either to stress or to anything in a conversation, why they perhaps are responding that way. And so, especially when people have a very strong response, won't take it necessarily literally into heart. It may just be their way of expressing themselves rather than that they're more mad than anyone else, perhaps.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes we're talking about how they react under stress again. So I don't know whether using the colors at the moment, whether you could figure out what color preference they might be and what they're leading with. So we won't mention any names, but if you can think of that individual and it's not too obvious, would it be easier to figure out whether they're led with green, yellow, blue, or red energy?
Yeah. You identify their personality type, I suppose, and take that into account with the feedback they're giving you in a conversation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just the whole framework with insights is really to raise our self-awareness and their self-awareness and then reflect accordingly. Um, the magic happens is when everybody in a company embraces this. Um, the challenge can be is if one person does this, you've got that frame of reference, but not everybody else has. But the magic happens is when this is embedded in one organization. So my previous employer, we got everybody to do this. And in what you could have at the end of an email was a color preference. It could be stacked. So straight away, when you have meetings, you could see different personality types and you could see if you're having a one-on-one with somebody, how you might need to up your yellow, up your blue, etc. So I did used to have meetings with some people who were quite happy not having an agenda, would just jump on a meeting, have a bit of a brainstorm, where you'd have other people with a strong blue energy, really didn't like that. They like to know what the structure is going to be, where we're going with this, what the ideal outcome would be. So there's two conflicting preferences there. But when you know what somebody is led by, you can prepare for meetings and those interactions that much more effectively. And for that person who really doesn't like structure, it raises their awareness that if they're dealing with a colleague who's quite blue, to actually change themselves a little bit in the way they're doing things and say, right, well, for this person, it's really important that I give them a good structure. I highlight the goals of the meeting and what ideal outcomes would be. So yeah, it's for everybody really. So thank you for that. Second question, where in your business would better communication make the biggest difference? So I'm assuming that communication is an issue because it comes up in all businesses always. Would it be performance, engagement, or relationships? This could be a tough one. So if this is sensitive, please don't put it in the chat. But if you feel you're happy to do that, it'll be interesting to see if we get any comments in that. So would an improvement in communication improve performance, engagement, teamwork, and relationships?
So we've actually had one of each so far: relationships, performance, engagement. There we go, another engagement. So seemingly quite a mix so far.
Okay. Yeah. So again, different businesses, different challenges, and we know that improved communication can make a big improvement in those areas. So this is a bit of a cheeky one, but on a scale of 0 to 100%, how confident are you that you know your preferred communication style accurately to read others and then consistently adapt and connect? That's the key here. So are you completely self-aware and know what your preferences are and under stress and how you react? And you feel you're able to spot those in others? Can people put their percentage in the chat right now?
So far, we've got 80, 85, 70, 80, 80. 80 seems very popular. 45, 70, 80, 75, 60. Quite a varied mix, to be fair. Nobody's 100, though.
No.
60, 80, 75.
What I would say is 80 is pretty good. The one thing I'm going to say is that if we go right back to that second slide, when Tasha Eurich did all this research, it indicated that 95% of people thought they were fully self-aware, okay? But the actual reality was 15%. So sometimes we may think we're self-aware, we may think we're really good at reading others, but we're perhaps not as good as we are. So it's great that people are being positive about this, and it's great. And if that's the reality for you, fantastic, and I support that. All I would say is that the most optimistic case, and the word here is consistently. So that doesn't mean just on the odd day I can do that. It means consistently every day you are self-aware, you're able to adapt to others, and you're doing that on a consistent basis. A lot of research would say sometimes when the stress hits in a company, that's when we lose our self-awareness. So that's something just to reflect on. Just as an interesting thing, because I really appreciate everybody coming along today, a bit of feedback for me from the messages you've got, and there's no commitment on your behalf, but how many people do you feel, put your hand up and just say yes, if you feel you'd get benefit from going a bit deeper to apply insights or this kind of communication preference, understanding a little bit more for yourself personally or in your business. Nobody's going to pounce on that. It's just to figure out whether this landed for you today, whether you got something from it, and whether it's has been valuable for you and you're curious to know more. That's all it is. Be interested to see how people react on that.
I think if I'm counting correctly, we've had about 8 or 9 so far thumbs up saying that yeah, they would benefit from a bit of a deeper understanding to it. There's another one that's just come in as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm a big believer in my career that to be a person who leads themselves really well, every day is a learning day. And we do know that in the 21st century, being human is going to make you stand out. And sometimes studying this and going deeper can really help you. Believe it or not, outside work, what was incredibly useful is I did this with my family, and it really helped personal connections with my family members as well. So I did find out quite a lot, which I thought I knew my family members really well. But when I saw their profile, I was able to see them as they truly were, and then I could see potentially where my communication style might cause friction, and that raised my awareness of how I could adapt as well. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So thank you for that. So all I would say really is we can open the floor to any more questions, but if you do want to just have a general chit chat, you want to have a 45-minute just a discovery chat over a cup of coffee, talk about any bits of communication. It's completely free. What I'd say is just scan this on the screen, and that goes right through to my diary. And if you want to set anything up for maybe it's too much before December, but if you want to set anything up for January or February, you're very welcome just to jump on a call with me and we can chat confidentially one to one. But yeah, I'm just going to open the floor now to anybody else who wants to ask any questions. Is there anything you've got yourself, Henry?
No, not from me personally. Like I'm quite aware of this one, having spoken to you a number of times about it, Marcus, together at
Yeah,
events and what have you. And I can vouch at the chamber, we've actually had the pleasure of having Marcus come in and deliver this session to us at one of our all staff meetings, and the feedback from that was incredibly positive, saying everyone got so much from it. So I'd definitely recommend discussing this further with Marcus if you have the chance to do so. So, like you said, scan the QR code. If not, come to some of our events. Marcus will most likely be there, won't you, Marcus?
yeah, oh, definitely. I'm a big fan of the chamber. So if I think everybody on the call would be a member, wouldn't they?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Primarily.
Primarily, yeah. So I think it's great. It is a bit like a family community. People are so supportive, and yeah, it's definitely all the chamber events are always in my diary anyway to connect with everybody. So yeah, hopefully might even have chats with some of you at future events as well.
Michael, you've unmuted.
Yeah, that took me a moment to get the unmute button to work. So, hi, Marcus.
Hi.
I just wanted to say, for me, this is not news to me, and my colours were what I thought they were going to come out to. I find it's most useful, not for me in what I do now as a coach, because I'm not aware of anybody else's colours. So I have lots and lots of conversations with lots and lots of people, and I'm trying to adapt. And I do some performance coaching as well within business. But I don't
Yeah.
know the colours of anybody. And
Yeah.
I find the most important thing for me is to recognise my own style and
Yeah.
to try and adapt to what I'm hearing in the moment.
Yeah.
So if I'm working with a company on a performance issue and I'm maybe doing 3 coaching calls or something with that person, to try and come back in on the second call with an adapted way of working, if I can, to what I got back in the first place from that person. But I think this works well if you're working within a team and everybody's had their coding done. I
Yeah.
think this is designed for that. I don't think it's designed to be very effective when you don't know the other person's color, because the adaptability is key, but that's hard to adapt to somebody's color. For me, it's just more intuitive.
Yeah, I think there's general principles here that if you're in a conversation, the one thing I haven't shown people is there's more elements to this, whether you're on the extroversion scale, the introversion, whether you're intuitive or sensory, that kind of thing as well. But the one thing you can do when you get really good at this is you can look at emails. You can figure out what somebody's primary color is by the composition of their email. And even when you see people in person, not necessarily on a Teams call, but in a social event, the way they express themselves and communicate, tone, body language. When you get familiar with this, you can make. You've got to be careful that you don't assume anything, but you can pick up their primary color. And after a while, it's all about knowledge as absorbing this and getting to use it on a regular basis. But I do agree, when you're in a team setting and everybody goes through this, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So, if you've got teams where they're not always gelling well together, they can do profiles. And I've seen this when in medical aesthetics, where I've gone into one where it's all been almost like a war zone. We had a team day, they did the profiles, it was a fun event, and it completely broke the ice. And they used to say, now I completely get you. And this is where you've usually got people with opposite primary colours. So you're quite right. But yeah, the self-awareness piece, if we think about it, it's that 95% of people think they're self-aware, but only 15% truly are. So starts with self-awareness. Yeah. But thank you, Michael. That was really good.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you both. Thanks, Michael. Catherine, you were just asking where Marcus, where are you based?
So yeah, I'm based in. I feel a bit of a fraud. So I'm based in East Sussex, the East Sussex-Kent border. So I walk 5 miles, I'm into Kent. So I do feel like I'm a part of the Kent geography. So yeah, I live south of Tunbridge Wells, about 15 miles in the East Sussex Weald. Yeah. But I travel all over the southeast anyway, so I much prefer doing these things face to face. As you can appreciate, it's better connection then. Yeah.
We're neighbours, Marcus.
Are we?
Oh, I'm in Hawkhurst, so you must be somewhere close to that.
Oh, crikey, Hawkhurst. Yeah, just up the road then. Yeah. Yeah. Nice place.
Perfect. Fantastic. The only other point people have made is if they're able to have a copy of the slides, Marcus, is that okay? If so,
Yeah.
send them my way. I can get them sent over afterwards alongside the recording of this session. So we'll definitely get something out to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And just have a play around with it. Might even be a party game at Christmas or something like that. But it's so much fun to do, and stuff like this, because it's gamified. And when we do a live workshop, I think that's why it lands so well. As you can see, it's not particularly academic to understand, but it's a joy to do, and staff love it, and they feel it's part of their investment as well in their development. So thank you, everybody. I mean, I'm very impressed with everybody's engagement, but I know you've got busy jobs to go back to. So I will send out the PowerPoint, and please come back to me. Just have a chat, have a connection. We're part of the chambers, so we're all here to support one another. Yeah.
Perfect. Marcus, thank you ever so much. And thank you to everyone else who joined us today. Like Marcus said, that was an incredibly engaging session, which is always brilliant to see on these webinars. So that does actually bring us pretty much bang on to 2 o'clock, which does bring us to the end of the session. So again, Marcus, thank you ever so much. Everybody else, thank you for joining. I've been Henry from the Kent and Victor Chamber of Commerce, and have a fantastic rest of your day.